In the legal system, once a person is arrested, that marks the first step in the investigation. The final step doesn't come until a jury issues a verdict of guilty or not guilty for the person being accused of a crime. But it's what happens in between those two steps that's often the key to the outcome. Investigators collect crucial pieces of evidence to strengthen their cases. Our Quentin Smith speaks with a legal expert about this. Quentin, how important is it for prosecutors to have the right evidence for their case?
Well, Scott, that evidence is what makes or breaks a case. There have been cases where prosecutors have had enough evidence to take a person to trial. Then there are times when there's not enough evidence. It all comes down to the burden of proof, which sometimes can be tough to prove. Courtrooms like this one in Lowndes County have dozens of criminal trials take place each year. Each case is different, but they all have one thing in common. There must be significant evidence connecting the suspect to the alleged crime.
Evidence can come in through testimony, come in through eyewitnesses, it can come through a DNA, come through bullets that have been examined to determine to come from certain guns that may be in the possession of an individual.
Sometimes that evidence can easily connect an individual to the crime.
If you're sitting there on camera showing what you did and it's a clear picture of the person in video, it's hard to get up there and deny that they did something.
But then there are times when it's difficult. WCBI legal expert and defense attorney Jeff Hosford says officers failing to do a thorough investigation and collect all of the necessary evidence can cause big problems for the prosecutor's case.
If an officer investigates a case and they feel like they know the person did it and they just sit back and they base it on that information, and then 2 years later you come to trial and the officer says, well, I just know he did it, but all the evidence that was existing at the time has disappeared, it's hard to convict that person because there is no testimony or there is no factual evidence to tie that person to the crime.
In these instances, when the evidence isn't strong enough or doesn't point in the direction of the person being charged, Hosford says it's common to see prosecutors dismiss the charges being brought against the suspect.
It's a tough spot to be in. I mean, because you got one family grieving, you got the police officers over here saying he did it, and then you got evidence that shows he didn't do it. And as a prosecutor, your job is to say, the evidence doesn't prove he did it.
Now, new evidence can come into play at any time as long as it's presented to both parties. Hosford says in those situations, it's common to see prosecutors ask for a continuance, like the trial recently in Noxubee County that we reported on yesterday. For more on that story, just visit our website at WCBI.com.